All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube live tasting with Woodford Reserve for Father's Day. I'm so excited to actually play host tonight because we're talking to the person that I jokingly like to call my bourbon dad. So we're going to talk about all our wonderful dads, my dad, Chris Morris's dad, tonight on this tasting, and drink some Woodford Reserve too. So Chris, welcome. This should be a fun night.
Yes, thank you. I know we're coming from some couple of special places. Where are you at tonight?
Yes, I am coming to you all live from my dining room. And Chris, where are you coming live from?
My new Father's Day gift, my Woodford Reserve studio in the basement at home.
I like it. We're going to be streaming CMTV.
That's right. And hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have some fun.
Yes. So everyone, I just want to kind of lay out the evening. We are going to go through a little slideshow that Chris is going to kind of take us through, and I'm going to comment as well. And then, of course, we are going to talk about our wonderful Woodford Reserve Distiller Select Bourbon. And, of course, one of my favorites, the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. And then we're going to get into making some cocktails. So it should be a fun evening. And I hope you've got your bourbon ready.
Yes, let's get started.
Okay. So we have our first photo up, and this is, I know, my home away from home. And Chris, I think you probably feel the same way. But why don't you tell us a little bit about this place?
Yes, that's one of my favorite views, Elizabeth, of the distillery, our home away from home, just showing that beautiful 19th century building built in 1838, a national landmark, the oldest distillery building still active in the country. It's as old as many single malt distilleries. So we're so proud of that. And of course, when it was built in 1838, it was a pot still distillery, later converted to column still. And of course, as most of us know, we've reverted back to pot still distillation. So turning the pages back to be like we used to be.
Yes, it's quite an interesting building to go into, and it just brings a lot of warm fuzzies and relaxation when you walk in there. So let's see what's inside this beautiful distillery.
Oh yeah, there's upstairs in our mash floor, and that's one of our cypress fermenters. What's going on in that picture? It looks hot and steamy.
It does. So for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to visit the Woodford Reserve Distillery, we have these beautiful cypress wood fermenters. They don't impart any flavor into the product, but they are kind of more historically accurate as to how people would have fermented during that time period. And what we're doing there is cleaning. So we will actually steam clean our fermenters after we've dropped a fermenter for around 2.5 hours or so to get it clean, try to kill as much bacteria as we possibly can.
Yes. And of course, from there, the fermented mash goes to those beautiful stills. I knew that picture was coming. Those are our iconic stills. And we really made history when we brought triple distillation to America. We're the first whiskey distillery in the history of our country, not just Kentucky, but the entire country, to triple distill a new make whiskey. Man, that's really great. And of course, that's one of the key reasons our whiskey tastes so good, is that triple distillation aspect of every bottle of Woodford Reserve.
Exactly. And that is just the most iconic spot that I think is the most photographed in our distillery. It's absolutely stunning. Okay, so now here we are. This is the historic warehouse. I feel like Chris and I spend a lot of time in this beautiful warehouse. Again, built in the 1800s, and it is a heat cycled warehouse. So when you walk in, if it's a winter day, sometimes it might be like summer-like temperatures in there. And we're really trying to get as much character out of those barrels as we possibly can. So trying to heat it up and cool it down. And we store a lot of our specialty products in there. And so it's easy access for Chris and I.
Yeah, we sure spend a lot of time doing sampling in Warehouse C. As you told everybody, Elizabeth, we not only have rye and bourbon and double oaked and malt and wheat, but we have our special products as well. Master's Collection, Distillery Series, and even some Woodford Reserve Baccarat, the cognac finish going on in there. So always fun to spend time in Warehouse C.
It is.
And okay. There's Dad.
There's my dad. Shout out to my father, Tim O'Neill. There I am. I'm pretty sure that's a nice glass of Woodford Double Oaked, and my dad and I sharing a good moment. That was actually at my wedding a few years ago, or my rehearsal dinner, I guess. And yeah, my dad is the one. My mom worked in the industry, but my dad is the bourbon lover, and actually probably the first person to ever introduce me to Woodford Reserve back a long time ago, before I could even consume alcohol or even think that I would want to consume alcohol. So yes, my dad is definitely the one who kind of paved that way for me. So Dad, if you're watching, hi, happy early Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, Tim. And
all right, now we have another father up.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's my dad. And he is in the annual report of our parent company, Brown-Forman. He went to work at the Brown-Forman Distillery in 1946. And he's called a carefully trained, competent person. And of course, he was a union employee. He came in out of the service in 46, got his first job at the distillery, and so proud of him because he was the first union employee in the history of the company to make the transition to management. And he became an executive at Brown-Forman. And that's why I'm at Brown-Forman.
That's amazing. Really great story to think about. This next picture is going to be quite interesting as well, as your dad progressed in his career.
Yes, I love that picture. There's a whole series of photographs of Dad at a liquor store. Don't know where it is. And that liquor store had a de-scented skunk as its mascot running up and down the counter. And there's Dad with a skunk.
That is, I mean, that's just the funniest, most unusual thing I think I've ever seen of a liquor store. But, you know, I love that they captured the moment of your dad. And
there he is at the office with my birth announcement, and that's the company newsletter, company magazine, and he came into work, and it was all decorated by his colleagues. So my mother, like your mom, also worked in the industry. She worked at the company, and so I was literally a distillery baby, going to the distillery as a child on weekends and things, and literally playing in the distillery, in the granary and the coal pile. It was just fun growing up in an old distillery.
I remember you sharing stories of people, you know, playing golf and shooting golf balls around and things at the
little golf course at the distillery.
Of all things. That's so interesting. All right. So this next one,
and
now this is very interesting. I remember seeing
this. Certificate.
Yes, your Brown-Forman birth certificate. But for those of you who can't read it, I just want to point out that it says that they created this for Chris's father when Chris was born. And it says that there's only one, approximately 7 pounds, red, shrunken, and screaming lump of flesh, not waterproof and priceless. So I thought that was really cute and just so thoughtful, and it speaks volumes to our parent company, Brown-Forman, and kind of what their values are. Yes,
and I still keep that as you know, hanging in my office, and it's a little worse for the wearer, but I've still got it. And it was in that previous photograph in the frame on his desk.
Yeah. Oh, who's that little person?
That's before I had any Woodford Reserve gear to wear, I guess. That's an unbranded diaper. In the backyard on Old Oak Street, many years ago.
So,
and yeah, there we are. His first Father's Day. well, my first Father's Day as well, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
Those are great pictures, Elizabeth. Thank you for having them tonight.
Yeah, I just thought it was fun to kind of walk through the distillery and then walk down memory lane and share with everyone and celebrate Father's Day. So we now have, let's move on to the tasting portion. So I thought everybody, I hope you have your Woodford Reserve poured up. And let's talk about Woodford Reserve Distiller Select Bourbon. Our flagship, it's what the brand was founded on. And this is truly a special whiskey that I think changed the industry in a lot of ways. Don't you think, Chris?
It sure did. Of course, we're 24 years old now. We launched this wonderful brand in 1996 in October. And what a day that was. The day the industry came, we had a giant party. And it was a day, I firmly believe, changed the industry. Because at that time, bourbon was in the midst of a long-term decline. It would continue to decline for years. Famous distilleries had been closing around. Stitzel-Weller, Yellowstone, Medley closed. And famous brands were going out of existence. And we decided to create a new bourbon, open up an old distillery, restoring it, and even open the distillery for tours. And there was no tourism, bourbonism as it's called at the time. And that's why all the dignitaries who were at the distillery in Woodford County were just shocked. And that was the moment that got the Kentucky industry going again. Everybody said, we can do this. And it revitalized the industry. And since the opening of Woodford Reserve, there have been 70 new distilleries open in Kentucky.
That's amazing.
Over 400 Kentucky straight bourbon brands introduced to the market. And of course, bourbon is growing again. So if anyone wonders, why is bourbon so popular today? It's a 2-word answer. It's on the wall behind me, Woodford Reserve.
Yes. And I think I had an interesting question the other day. Somebody was asking me about our package, the bottle shape itself. And, you know, we have been known to say at Woodford Reserve that people first drank Woodford Reserve with their eyes and then with their palates. So the package is beautiful, but then the liquid itself really had to stand up to that package and that what people thought.
Absolutely. That was calculated. This bourbon, we had envisioned it to be a global brand, not just selling in the United States, not just selling in Kentucky, but around the world. And that meant when you leave the shores of the United States, whiskey is Scotch. And the other main spirit recognized around the world for its high quality is cognac, obviously a brandy, cognac. And we knew we were going to have to compete with great Scotch brands and cognac brands in Europe, in Asia, in South America, and just around the world. And therefore, we had to have a contemporary, stylish, premium package that would not identify us as an old-fashioned Kentucky bourbon. This is something new. And that package sure did the job. As you said, Elizabeth, people would buy it because it looks so smart. But the second test is, will they buy it again because the whiskey in the bottle had to be good?
Yes. Yes. And I think that there are some things that having come to this very historic distillery, but it was completely gutted. There were no, existing kind of framework for how we should produce this whiskey. So we really got to implement the flavor profile based on how we were going to make it. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the 5 sources of flavor and how this whiskey is achieved with all that complexity?
Oh, yes. So the 5 sources of flavor is not a new concept, but it was fragmented. Distilleries would talk about their water and what it did for their product. And when I mean a distillery, it could be a Scotch distillery, it could be an Irish distillery, it could be a bourbon distillery here in Kentucky or down in Tennessee, or what the yeast did or what the barrel did. And everything was talked about in slices because that one flavor source was probably the reason they talked about it, the reason they tasted the way they did. Well, if we're going to be global, if we're going to be the best, which of course we're no longer the best, we're the finest. That's a better term, I think. All 5 sources of flavor had to play a role. So I coined the phrase, the 5 sources of flavor, concept or philosophy that you and I work against every day. Make the 5 sources contribute a discernible flavor impact. And those 5 sources of flavor are: what is the grain recipe? The water, which is a given because we have that wonderful water here in Woodford County. We have our fermentation process with our unique strain of yeast. We have that distillation process, making the conscious effort to introduce triple distillation to America. And then we mature, maturation in our own. Now, you could talk about this in just a moment, our bespoke barrels, our couture barrels, as you called it. So we put all 5 sources of flavor together to make this unique whiskey. Our recipe, 72% corn, it's bourbon, 18% rye, adds spice, but not too much, just enough, and 10% malted barley, which adds nutty notes in an all-natural process. Our limestone water is natural. Nothing is done to it. And that minerality brings, again, the basis of fruit and floral notes to our final product. Our yeast is unique. It was designed by our own microbiologist, and we ferment the longest in the industry, up to 7 long days in those wooden cypress fermenters. And that develops a whole range of flavor, especially, again, fruit character. So our fermented mash, as you well know, is fruity, it's spicy, it's nutty. It's not like any other bourbon you make. And believe me, folks, Elizabeth and I have tasted most of them. We know what our good competitors and colleagues in the industry, and they're all making great spirit. Ours is different, because those triple pot stills really bring these flavors to life. And then we enter the barrel at 110 proof, relatively low entry proof. And why don't you tell everybody about our special barrel? While I take a sip of whiskey.
You take a sip, you enjoy, and I'll talk about our barrels, because we have our own cooperage, which is a huge advantage, I think, because we are able to control all those different flavor elements or ways you develop flavor in your barrel. So we can season for as long as we'd like. So we typically do around a 9-month seasoning on a Woodford Reserve barrel. And what seasoning does is just letting the wood sit outside, leaching the tannins off of it, and softening the wood. So it becomes a little sweeter, a little softer. And then, of course, we toast. And toasting is a process that we created at the Brown-Forman cooperage and perfected this. And it is going to enhance those sweeter notes in the wood. And so we toast for 10 minutes on the standard Woodford Reserve barrel. And then we will set the barrel on fire. We'll do it for 25 seconds. And so we're separating. Toasting naturally happens anytime you set the barrel on fire, but we are going to separate that out so that we can really, really control and manipulate that toasting process to sweeten the wood. And then, of course, our whiskey matures in those barrels for 5 to 7 years, and we do heat cycling in our warehouses. And so that's not just controlling the temperature in the warehouse, but it's really fluctuating it. And I think of it as if you were taking a tea bag and dipping it in and out of the hot water. The more times you dip it in and out, the more flavor and color you're going to extract from that tea bag. So it's really an important part of the process, and something that we value quite greatly at our distillery, and we utilize it in all of our warehouses that we're maturing Woodford Reserve in. So it's a huge advantage.
And the result, the 5 areas of flavor. This is the most complex bourbon in balance, and the 5 areas of flavor are sweet aromatics, the sweet notes, the fruit and floral notes, spice, wood notes, and grain character. And so Elizabeth and I have decided we're not going to talk about what you should nose and taste in Woodford Reserve, because when you have 215 flavors in a glass of whiskey, we don't know what you all taste. You might think Woodford's fruity, you might think it's spicy, you might think it's nutty, because when the flavors are in balance, it's up to you to decide what you find. And for me, I can tell you what I taste. I taste a great bourbon, I taste the finest, because it's always changing. This is a dynamic product. It might be fruity for me tonight or spicy, depends on what I had for lunch or what's going on, what time of day. Woodford Reserve is dynamic, it's versatile, and that makes it such a great drink. So we're not going to tell you all what you nose and taste. That's up to you. And that we mean that sincerely.
Exactly.
And tonight I'm getting the sweeter notes. And usually it just depends. But we're going to tell you what you're going to taste next, because we're going to have a little glass of double oaked.
All right. So Woodford Double Oaked is definitely one of my favorites out of our whole family of expressions for Woodford Reserve. And this is going to start out as our Woodford Reserve Distiller Select Bourbon, what we just talked about and just tasted. But we're taking that fully mature whiskey, so 5 to 7 years aged in our standard barrel, and then we're going to age it for another 6 to 12 months in a special barrel that is made specifically for this second maturation process. It's a heavily toasted, so we're going to do a 40-minute toast as opposed to that 10-minute toast, and then we're going to do just a flash char, so 5 to 10-second char on that barrel. It is still a new charred oak barrel, so therefore this is still a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, and I tell you, it's absolutely exquisite. It is the most friendly Kentucky hello you'll ever get from a bourbon whiskey. I guarantee it. And we're going to tell you what you're going to taste, because it is sweet aromatic forward, and that is due to the heavy toasting. So when you heavily toast a barrel like that, you're getting into that lignin layer where all the vanillin lives, and you're just exploding that. So think of rich vanilla, caramel, maple syrup, butterscotch, all those things. But let's not forget that it's still Woodford Reserve. There's still spice. There's still those fruit notes, and there's still some of that great grain note and wood note coming through. So it's not lacking in the other areas. It's just more forward in the sweet aromatics.
That's right. So Woodford bourbon is the balance of the 5 areas of flavor. This is, again, focused, highlighting the sweet aromatics. And hopefully we'll get together again, folks, and we'll taste rye. Our rye is spice. Our malt is nutty. Our wheat is fruit. So each member of the Woodford family, after the bourbon, focuses on one of the 5 areas of flavor, yet still showcases all 5 areas because they're Woodford Reserve products. You know, Elizabeth, growing up, and probably with your mom and dad too, there used to be an old tale, I guess, that in the summer you drank white spirits, gin and vodka, and in the winter months, fall winter months, you could drink the brown spirits, bourbons, whiskeys, brandy. Except, of course, here in Kentucky, we always drink bourbon year round. But as you and I travel and talk to people who are just learning about bourbon, they think maybe they can't drink it in the summer. It's too hot. Well, we have our 2 glasses neat here, but why don't we make a Father's Day cocktail?
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Long, cool, refreshing, and fun to make. And that's one thing. You can enjoy Woodford neat on the rocks, splash of water, but it goes in any cocktail you usually use a whiskey or a brandy. So it's it's so complex and balanced. It's very versatile. So I'm going to make one for Tim and me, and Tim's going to have to come over and get it here. So these are highball glasses, tall glasses, and we're going to use Woodford Reserve bourbon. And you're going to start your drink with the Woodford Reserve first, because it's the lightest of our ingredients. So if we were to put it at the end of making this drink, it would float on top. And we don't want that. We want to mix the drink as we are making it. So we're going to put 1.5 ounces of Woodford in each glass.
Nice.
And
good healthy pour.
And that is so easy. Now, this is a summertime drink, lots of ice, right? And we're going to put in the ice next. And Elizabeth and I always talk about ice, big cubes, little cubes. What do you like?
There's no right or wrong ice
right.
that you go with. I mean, if you're trying to go fancy, you can just throw the ice. And of course, if you're very flavor sensitive, it is important to make sure that the water you're using doesn't have any off notes in it, because I'll pick up on that sometimes. But honestly, some ice, just pour it in there, whatever you have at home. If you use it in other drinks, fine.
Yes. So there we have ice, and we're already mixing the drink as the ice is melting with the Woodford. It's already mixing. Now, this would have been a highball, but I'm going to turn it into a cocktail. I'm going to put some Woodford Reserve bitters in, and these are our aromatic bitters. And a cocktail has to have bitters. And I just think it brings some of those wonderful wood and spicy notes of Woodford more to the forefront, because we're going to put a lot of sweetener in here because we are making a Woodford Reserve thoroughbred. And that means ginger beer is going in next. What do people normally call this drink?
Yeah, so people typically will call this, it's kind of a play on a mule. And sometimes people, when you use bourbon, they call it a Kentucky mule. But, you know, we are nestled in the heart of thoroughbred country where Woodford Reserve is. And Kentucky is known for its thoroughbreds, not its mules. We don't ride mules around. We ride thoroughbreds and we race thoroughbreds. So we're making a Woodford Reserve thoroughbred.
Yes, I've never seen a mule race around Churchill Downs. No. Never. No. So the drink is mixing itself. We could have a stir or a straw, but we don't need it. It mixed itself, and we're going to put a nice slice of lime, and it's that easy. Ginger beer, little bitters, Woodford Reserve, ice, and that is a Woodford Reserve thoroughbred, a long, cool drink for a hot Father's Day, because it's coming around the corner and it's also summertime.
Exactly. I love that because, you know, I think people a lot of times get into a kind of tunnel vision when they're consuming their whiskey. They get worried that, oh, it has to only be consumed neat or on the rocks. And how dare you take Woodford Reserve, such a beautifully crafted whiskey, and put it into a highball drink or cocktail. And, you know, I just think that your base spirit really matters, first of all. So even if you're going to just make a highball, it's important to have a really well-made base spirit. It's the same when you're cooking at home. Fresh ingredients are always better than something that's frozen. You've got to go with the best to make it taste the best. And also, we always say, it is drink it how you like it, you know?
That's right.
Fun. You know, it's supposed to be fun, and just enjoy it however you like drinking it.
Yes, we make Woodford Reserve for people to enjoy and not to even think about it. We want people to be with family and friends, hopefully out, maybe at a gathering at home, and not to be thinking, but just reacting to the great environment they're in and enjoying the drink. And if Woodford Reserve is part of that special moment, or maybe by yourself and you're just relaxing and you don't want to think about the world and you just want to mellow out, that's all that matters, is to enjoy that glass of Woodford Reserve.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, I jokingly call Woodford Reserve on the rocks is the evolving cocktail, because as it dilutes down with your ice, you start to see different flavor notes that come out. And it just is a perfect drink to sit there and sip and savor.
Yeah, I know. Okay. We got a few minutes left. Are we going to have any questions, or do we have anything else to do?
Well, I'm going to check and see if I see any. We've got lots of comments about Woodford Double Oaked. People are really liking the Double Oaked, which I have to agree with you. For those of you that don't know, I am expecting a baby. That is going to be my first drink after I deliver this baby. So I agree with all of you on your comments there. But I don't see too many.
Matt will join us next Father's Day.
Yes, and my husband will be joining us next Father's Day. But one thing that I do want to highlight is that, you know, we have a wonderful partnership with Justin Thomas, and he put together his own personal selection a few years ago, came out and spent some time with Chris and I, and we have a link that will be in the comments section after we're finished here, but it'll show a nice video of Justin and his father, Mike Thomas, just sharing moments and what they've done over the years on their Father's Day, and sharing those memories over a glass of Woodford Reserve. And so we really and truly do encourage everyone to, during this Father's Day, sit down and just reconnect with your dad over a glass of Woodford and make new about old memories. It's the perfect to celebrate.
That's very true. Everybody should cherish every moment they have with our fathers. Mine's been dead for many, many years, and I think of him often, and it was really great to see those photographs tonight, and of course to see Tim on the screen as well. That was wonderful.
Exactly. I look forward to spending some time with my dad on Father's Day.
That's great.
I think that kind of wraps it up for us. I really want to just thank everyone for tuning in. And again, I hope that you enjoyed what we shared. Always reach out to us at woodfordreserve.com to ask any questions. Chris and I are always happy to answer anything, and have a wonderful Father's Day. So cheers to all the Woodford fathers out there.
That's right. Salute, everyone.
Have a good evening.